What do you do when you find yourself at the darkest point of your life, grappling with betrayal and isolation? For my guest in this episode, Edward Okafor, this pivotal moment ignited a transformation that led to the creation of Wisdom of Men, a global movement focused on empowering high potential men. As a certified life coach, bodybuilder, and wellness strategist, Edward has dedicated his life to helping men optimize their hormonal health and live with purpose. I am so excited for you to hear as we explore Edward's inspiring journey and the valuable lessons he has to share about resilience and brotherhood.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
Hi, Edward. Welcome. Thank you for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here. I'm feeling good, grateful, and excited to share space today.
Fantastic. Now, Edward, I know that you, in the preparation for this interview, you mentioned hitting one of the darkest points in your life. So can you share a little bit more about that particular moment and the specific challenges you faced during that time for the listeners?
Definitely. Well, a couple of years ago, there was a moment where everything I held dear, like relationships, identity, and my vision, was basically fractured all at once, betrayed by people I trusted, and I felt completely alone. So I ended up isolating myself, but in that silence, I confronted the realization that life wasn't going to get easier, but I had to get stronger. Life is going to hand me happiness, but I had to focus on living a life that I deserve. And so that started the foundation of a bigger picture than dealing with some of the things that I was confronted with versus wallowing the pain. I was able to focus on confronting them and build from them. So going from being broken to becoming unbreakable was my newfound purpose. And then from that process, I realized I wasn't the only person that went through certain issues such as this. I decided to focus on helping others that may have experienced the same situations when it comes to feeling lost and abandoned or misdirected in their life's path.
Wow. Without mentioning names, are you able to speak of the betrayal specifically?
Without speaking of any names, this is the thing about life is that, regardless who is crossing your path, the universe will put individuals in your path in a way for you to learn a lesson. And it doesn't really matter what face is that lesson is still meant to be learned. And so through that, a lot of people have to put themselves as a witness versus inside themselves experiencing situations. Because when we're focusing on experiencing situations, we allow our emotions to blind us. But when we put ourselves outside of situations and look at the bigger picture, we're able to see that there's lessons to be learned, so we don't have to cycle back and do that path. Because you either learn your lesson and move on, or you keep going through certain situations until that lesson is learned. And so regardless who those individuals were that made me feel, well, I wouldn't say made me feel a type of way, but allowed me to be more aware of certain areas that I wasn't aware before, definitely want to be accountable for my actions because, once you're playing the victim, you don't allow yourself to really see where you could have made those decisions to go to a different direction or have a different choice. And so regardless of the faces and the individuals, I still focused on learning a lesson versus not counting that as a blessing.
I love that you said that the universe will put this lesson in your pathway over and over again, because that is something that I experienced previously. But in that lesson over and over, because I felt that same way, and I would be like, you say universe, I say God, and I would be like, God, okay, here it is again. And like you said, it doesn't matter the face. It's a different person, the exact same experience, right? And I would be like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this again? But the key thing that you said that I really like, which is so true, which is what I found for myself, is the difference between each of those situations is, and then finally when you learn the lesson, is you realize, wait, I can make a different decision. And it seems like once you realize, because I was making the same decision or a similar decision over and over to deal with that situation, which means, like you said, I haven't learned my lesson yet. And so here I'm faced with the same thing again. And then you feel, just like you said, you feel like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? I'm doing this again. Why is this happening again? But you're right, that once you make a different decision to go a different pathway, it's like, oh, I got it now. And I can tell you, just like you said, I can tell you now that I don't have to deal with that. I haven't seen that situation come up again. And maybe it has, but because I know I can make a different decision, I don't feel that same way if it has crossed my path. So that's definitely awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because that's the thing, is like we allow things to take our energy and our focus and our power. And when we allow those situations to take our attention and have us to react versus respond, that's attracting things that we don't actually want to be in our life, but that is necessary for us to learn from it in order for us not to be bothered by it.
No, that's so true. So do you feel like the experiences that you had were a catalyst for change?
Definitely. So that's the thing, is like throughout life, there's a quote that I really love, that a man must suffer because he is the marble and the sculptor. And so I put myself in these challenging situations to force myself to learn, to force myself to grow. Because a lot of people put themselves in these safety nets, their comfort zone. But how can you grow and learn if you stay in a nest? You have to jump and fly. That's in order to understand how to spread your wings.
That's easy, as you said, to paint yourself as a victim, right? It's like, oh, why are these things happening to me? This thing keeps happening to me. Nobody likes me. Everybody's out to get me. But like you said, you have to make a different decision. And so that means that you are making internal shifts. And so for you, what internal shifts did you recognize in yourself to propel you into this purpose now for men's wellness and high performance?
Well, it really started with, again, recognizing the pain due to a lot of the mental effects that I was experiencing. It created a physical manifestation of pain and stress, meaning I went to the hospital because I was having issues with my heart. Dealing with issues with sleeping. I mean, everything that I was experiencing, it was just like a analytical loop that kept going over and over in my head because I couldn't solve the problem of why I was dealing with these certain situations. And so, pain is something we all share, something that we hide, and something we run away from. But like once I embraced it, I realized there's no greater pain than the pain that we cause ourselves. And so that was one of the things that was like the foundation of what helped me towards alignment, to face the fear and the demon within myself, because there's no greater problem or issue than the ones that, we create for ourselves. We all have our own reality of how the world works and how people have their own perspectives. But again, this is how we think. To be frank, a lot of people, for the most part, everybody is selfish. No one's really thinking about us, but we think that other people are thinking about us. Same thing when it comes to pain. When we're feeling pain, this is our pain. many people have similar pains, but they don't share our pain. But we are at that phase where we're dealing with that pain, so we are responsible for dealing with it because no one else is going to deal with that pain for you. And so this is the, sort of shift that allowed me to really focus on giving the birth, creating the birth of wisdom of men, because this is an issue that a lot of men have in modern day society of holding in a lot of the issues and trying to walk the path of life alone. When you look at history, when it comes to brotherhood and armies and, how men band together and supported one another, either, in wars or even mental, philosophical groups, they were not meant to deal with situations by themselves. And so this is something that, that's being become more aware of lacking in the day-to-day society. Modern society is focused on, men must be strong, men must do things by themselves. We have so much weight on our shoulders that's being projected upon us, and when we step any form out of line, is our fault. However, we're meant to be steadfast and, not allow things to bother us, which creates internal issues. And so once I've started going internal, I was able to decipher a lot of the reactions that was manifesting because of things I was holding within myself during the present, the past, and even anxiety towards the future.
The one thing that's very interesting about human nature is how connected our minds and bodies are, right? And so while your mind is experiencing stress and anxiety, as you mentioned, in life, whatever you're experiencing, it's interesting how it manifests in our health. And like you said, you had to go to the hospital, you were dealing with heart things, and, other health issues. And, I just think about many, many people who are dealing with, these unexplainable ailments sometimes. And I often wonder, how connected is it to something that they're holding in their mind that they're stressing over or they have anxiety about? Mm-hmm. How connected is it, to the ailments that they are having? Because like you said,
exactly.
You really do have to go internal. You really do. And so what is that process like for you? How do you know, okay, I got to do some serious introspection. And I know you kind of gently talked about it, but what does that really look like? And especially for men, like you said, you are, as a man, and I have 3 sons, and I think about this all the time for them as I'm raising them, and I'm just like, well, I just need to make sure that they're connected to their emotions because, yes, they're supposed to have this external showing, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but they still are human inside, and we need to make sure that they are able to communicate their emotions of how they're feeling. So, yeah, what does that introspection process look like? How do you really go internal to bring those things out?
Okay. Well, initially, I believe in divine timing. The universe puts people in your life and path in order for you to go to that next phase within your journey of existence. And so during that time, the people that I held close to me that I felt betrayed by, as I was distancing myself from them, I was able to really call on people that had my best interest at heart. And so, at a point reaching rock bottom, I was able to connect better with my family, like my mother and my father. My childhood has its challenges like some people have, and it gave me an opportunity to really look at why I had certain issues in relationships or my self-image. And so with that, reaching out to connecting and building my relationship with my parents was very fundamental. Because, even as a child, adult, it doesn't matter. Everyone thinks about their guardian or their role models as they were growing up that really supported them or that helped them and that was available for them in their life. And so as a man, for sure, one of the most challenging things was a lot of the issues that I had with my father and that I had to face and voice. And so during that time, I developed a relationship with my first life coach and was able to break certain things down, learn certain strategies of my identity, and then evolve to communicating with a hypnotherapist, a psychiatrist. I reached out to many experts, even with my bodybuilding coach. I developed a table of knowledgeable individuals who could provide strategies and references and feedback for what I was experiencing and how I could improve. And then all of them, for the most part, the totality of it is facing the issue, facing the pain and the problems within, because you cannot grow or build unless you face what you hold dormant. And so, in my 30s, one thing I realized that a lot of my reactions and reactions and patterns in my character were issues with how I was raised. One thing about parents is that as children, we look at parents and we think, oh, they're invincible, they're wonderful, no one can, break them, but they're people too. And that's one thing I realized, that, parents are individuals and they have their own challenges, they have their own problems, they have their own insecurities. And if there's any issues when it comes to household problems, as children, sometimes we think that we're accountable for them when we are not. So instead of looking at my past and thinking about, this happened to me, I hate this happened to me, I look at it as, this happened to me, and I learned from it. And this allows me to see another version of myself and how I can grow, or even tell someone in the future, my children or other people in my surrounding circle, what challenges I went through and how they can avoid it or how they can learn from it.
No, that's so true. And I can tell you, one of the things that I strive to do with my children is to make sure I'm not responsible for their therapy as much as possible. But no, I joke. All right. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned distancing yourself from people who were once close to you, and it was very hard because of betrayal and distrust. But the thing that you have now is that you've learned how to form a new brotherhood and a new supportive community, and that is the formation of the Wisdom of Men. And so in that, organization, that movement, rather, it focuses on creating a supportive community, right? And outside of the negative aspects that happen in relationships. So what key elements do you believe are essential for building a brotherhood that truly supports high performance men? Because there's a key, like you said, it's the high performance, high profile, high potential, and even with that, I want to take a step back. Like, what exactly is a high performance or high potential man? Can you kind of give me and the listeners an attributes of that?
Definitely. So when we're thinking about these individuals, one of the core promises within my global platform and even the local High Performance Brotherhood group that I have where I'm located, we strive to help ambitious men to optimize their biology, habits, and mission so they can reclaim their energy, sharpen their focus, and dominate their life with clarity and confidence. And so the foundation and the core propositions of our foundation is support, encouragement, empowerment. And with those three pillars, it creates transformation. Support for community activities and personal connection, encouragement for wellness and lifestyle enhancement, and empowerment, providing individual coaching and even lifestyle, nutritional, fitness guidance within, being the best version of oneself and living the life that one deserves. And so with that, a lot of challenges that men have is not having that space And so what has been created with Wisdom Men is, is not only a community, but like you said, is a movement. Is a movement focused on optimizing one's health with support and brotherhood and transparency. I don't really like this word called vulnerability because it's like, oh, you're weak, you're vulnerable. But when you're transparent, you are able to be in a space where we're all equals. We're at this round table and we all experience so many different challenges. And there's no reason that we can't communicate and support one another when we all deal with these certain challenges. And then we also set certain goals and missions for ourselves. And by having a round table or individuals within our community, we're able to hold one another accountable and reclaiming clarity within one's mission and direction in life.
So how does someone get involved with the Wisdom of Men, and is it specifically exclusive for men?
All right. So it's all on major platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. There's a lot of recordings, podcasts, and opportunities that are provided. Resources on LinkedIn. Also can contact me on LinkedIn as well, Edward Okafor. But when it comes to this community, it allows people on all these different platforms, it allows people to directly contact me if they would want individual coaching. If they're locally in my location, we have our own local group within Asia. Right now with the High Performance Brotherhoods, where we do gym meetups, trainings, challenges. Also have other resources and networks that allow us to focus on optimize our health, like medical assistants and professionals that can provide more expertise within certain areas that men might be going through. And when it comes to prioritizing the focus for men in this space, does it mean that it's only for men? Because even in our Instagram online community, there's many women that follow, and it's the thing that's important is that individuals who know there is an imbalance between the masculine and feminine energy and are seeking support, guidance, or clarity on how a quality, high-performing man supposed to experience and live their path and walk their path in life. And so not saying that women aren't allowed, because as you said, you have sons, there's some women that's come to me who's like, oh, I have a brother, he would really learn so much from being in your community and listening to the resources and advice that you have. I've met some other women that would say, oh, I have a boyfriend, he would really be interested within this kind of information, because it's not only helping the men, but it also creates a foundation that provides connection and support for women as well, as in having a certain standard of a quality and high-performing man where she feels safe and secure.
I really love that you have this movement, because there are so many, YouTube channels and Instagram channels or profiles accounts that focus on women, how to be a high-valued woman and how to be, and it could be because that's my algorithm, perhaps, because I am a woman, who knows? But I do know that there are a lot of people out there who are helping women and who are being dating coaches and relationship coaches, and we have empowerment conferences and all of these things for women. So it's very rare that I see these same types of things for men, and I do believe that it's needed because there's so much noise out there, but I do recognize that biologically, right, and psychologically, there's just some things that are unique to a man. They just are. And I know that I'm an independent woman and all of that, but I do recognize that there are some things that are unique to men. And when men are in their, like you said, masculine energy, they perform very well in life. They are successful, and when they're in that space. And when they tend to be in a more feminine space, they do have a lot of struggles. They also have a lot of mental struggles, and I recognize that. And the same thing goes for women. When we're too far over the other side, and we're in our masculine space, same thing. We become more tired, and we have the same thing. We have more stress because we are not in the right space where we're supposed to be, because whether we want to fight it or not, biologically, there's just some certain things that are unique to men, and there are certain things that are unique to women. So I applaud you, Edward, for creating this community for men and creating this brotherhood, because it really is needed. It really, really is. Now, you mentioned collaborating with a life coach and bodybuilding coach in building this process and even going through your own journey. So how do you feel like these partnerships influence your recovery and even your own resiliency?
Having a life coach, a hypnotherapist, a bodybuilding coach, and a few other supportive experts created a feedback loop. And so within this feedback loop, it allowed me to have inner work that produce physical execution. Facing emotional wounds, building strong structure and confidence within myself and my body, and all these work together in creating the person that I am now. And then I'm still developing as being grounded, disciplined, and mission-oriented. So it's not only one source, but going to all these different experts and allowing their own expertise and their response based off of what I've experienced, what I've been experiencing or experienced, and taking all that together and developing upon it.
Wow, that's really awesome. Now, could you elaborate a little bit on the rituals and lifestyle changes that you've adopted to bring balance in your life? Because that's a hard thing to do, because we have so many responsibilities, in relationships, in our work, in life, and, health. There's so many things to take care of. But you have some specific rituals and things that you do that help to bring balance in your life. So could you share some of those, and perhaps it could help one of the listeners out there?
Exactly. So one thing, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard this quote, is like, when you're healthy, you have 1,000 problems, but when you're sick, you have one problem, right? And so one thing that I prioritize daily is health and my peace. Those are things that you can't replace, and those are things that are necessary in order for you to maneuver through life. And so even when it comes to my job, my 9 to 5, or if I have other events, or if I have, family or friends or training regimen, I try to construct my time productively, because, money can be replaced, but time can't be replaced, and time in itself is the currency. And so people should be a little bit more mindful of how they spend their energy, how they spend their time, how they spend their focus, what is distracting them from their focus or mission or purpose or goals. Sometimes we put ourselves in situations in order for us to deny what is actually meant to be our, direction. And so prioritizing one's health and peace, creating a rhythm of training, stillness, habits. Habits are very important, and it doesn't take that long to have a habit, create a habit. But a lot of people initially need to be aware of the bad habits or habits that aren't helping them in life, and create alternatives to better their positions that can be productive, not counterproductive. And certain things like that, mastering time is so important, because, tomorrow is never promised, only right now is. And so that's one thing that was one of the fundamentals of, creating a balance within in my life. And what I've told other people is that, we distract ourselves. Social media, family is fun, but also we need space from everybody. We need to have time to be alone for a minute. That's why meditation, breath work is so important. Going out in nature, just going for a walk. These are things that's very important. We're social creatures, but we're also creatures that need time of reflection. So reflection, journaling, writing, even playing music or doing art. These are certain things that is okay just to do alone in order for you to be with yourself. So these are just some fundamental rituals and habits that were really helpful when it comes to rebalancing my life and direction.
No, that is so true. Time is an important commodity, and it is one that you can't get back. However, if you do manage or learn how to manage your time well, then I do believe that helps to have the balance. So I couldn't agree with you more. I was once told by a very busy woman, very high, powerful woman, that she was like, you know what, you can have it all. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, no, you can have the relationship, you can have the great career, you can have the family, you can have all of it. You can do self-care. She said, it's how you manage your time. She said, now you may not be able to pour the same amount of time into each of those activities, and you have to figure out how much time you want to pour into each of those activities. But, that you bring up time, and that is true. It's all about how you manage that time, and you can have that balance. I love that. Now, there may be someone out there that's struggling with, distancing themselves from a particular relationship. And it's hard to do that, whether it's a romantic relationship or it's a family relationship, friendship. It's very hard to distance yourself from someone, especially if it's not serving you. So what advice would you give to someone? Because you've been able to do that. You've been able to distance yourself from relationships that were not serving you, which is now why you were able to build a community that is now serving you, and you are also serving others in this wonderful brotherhood that you have built. So what could you say to someone that is having a similar journey where they need to distance themselves from certain relationships?
There's strength and integrity and distance and silence. Because a lot of people try to find the cure from those who poison them. And so this is something that I start to realize is that, you can't make people love you. You can't make people care for you. But you should know when people are taking advantage of things that you provide to them. Because, some people are givers, some people are takers. And for those takers, they find those givers and keep taking from them until those people who are giving, there's nothing left, and then they just move on to the next person. And so this is where boundaries come in, and recognizing these patterns in these individuals. Not saying that everybody is a villain, but everyone doesn't have the best interest for others. Unfortunately, we live in a selfish world. However, there are still people that are kind and great giving to others. And so when it comes to this, realizing that peace is still a priority and protecting that is very important. Being in solitude from mentors, these are things that I realize that distance isn't always about disconnection. Sometimes it's just a doorway to redefinition.
Wow. I love that you said people try to find a cure for when someone else poisons them. Wow. Like, you said a whole lot in that one sentence, because that is so true. That is so true, because like you said, some people are givers and there's a lot of people that are takers. I like to call them energy vampires. But it's so people who are just here to zap your energy or zap your money or zap your time or whatever it may be, because whatever it is that you have, because they haven't found a way to build it themselves. And so they come after you for your own resources. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And it is essentially a poison. And you're right. And we try to find a cure for that poison when it's like, wait, you didn't even cook that concoction. Someone else did. So you don't even know what what the recipe is for it. I love it. Now, Edward, it's hard to believe that we've come to the end of this conversation because it has been so insightful. But I have to ask you, as people are trying to prepare their own journey towards strengthening resilience, what do you feel are the practical steps that are needed to strengthen their own resilience?
I can break it down in 3 things for them. Lock in your non-negotiables, knowing what centers you, and don't betray it. A lot of us allow people to maneuver barriers that we put in front of ourselves, but that needs to be steadfast and the foundation for who we are. It's not about being guarded, but it's about being secure within ourselves, regardless what level or strength of water that flows through our life. Move your body daily. Physical movement is emotional movement. There's so many cures in being physically active that, more and more research and study is coming out that we've been doing it for millennia and all generations and decades, and not decades, but all centuries within our existence with, moving and being functional, not being seated in the chair all day, not being blinded and distracted by digital technology, but being outside, moving, interacting, breathing. We are still creatures and we still need interaction with our environment. And then lastly, schedule stillness, reflecting on how we respond to certain stressors and being able to survive those kind of storms and able to be prepared to survive those storms. You have to be prepared. So, like I was saying earlier in the beginning of this podcast, is that life isn't going to get easier, but you can get stronger. And the way you get stronger is by being aware of certain situations that may, shake the waters of your focus, but being aware and strategic on how to respond and not react, because in life, you're going to have challenges. It's not going to stop. But you can become aware of it, learn from it, and go through them, because everything is temporary. Nothing is permanent unless we allow it to be permanent.
Wow. And there you have it, folks. Lock in non-negotiables, move your body daily, and schedule stillness. Edward, thanks for being transparent and sharing your remarkable journey and insights on resilience and personal growth. Your dedication to empowering men through wisdom of men is truly inspiring. For our listeners, let this conversation be a reminder that resilience can be cultivated through intentional practices and supportive communities. So how can listeners find and connect with you once again? Please share all of your contact information.
Definitely. You can find me on all social media platforms at Wisdom Men Official and Edward Okafor on LinkedIn. And then for anyone, you are not broken, you are becoming. Every struggle is an invitation to build a version of you that no longer runs from the fire, but walks through it with purpose.
Do you have any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Believe in yourself and be kind to yourself.
Edward, thank you again for reminding us that we can rise above challenges and embrace our potential. I want to wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Edward Okafor, everyone. Be sure to join me next time for more uplifting stories and insights on resilience. Until then, keep pushing forward, embrace the journey, and remember that every setback can lead to a greater comeback. Dr. Rowe, signing off.